The snow was falling heavily as Lisa drove the SUV up the winding mountain road. Beside her, Mark fiddled with the radio, trying to find a station that wasn't static. In the back seat, Dana was immersed in her phone while Ian and Kevin discussed plans for their weekend getaway. The group of five had been best friends since college, and this trip was meant to be a break from their hectic city lives. The cabin came into view as they rounded the last corner. It was quaint but imposing, its dark wooden exterior blending with the surrounding forest. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, and warm light spilled from the windows. "This is perfect," Lisa said, parking the car. "A cozy weekend away from everything." Martha, the elderly owner of the cabin, greeted them at the door. Her wrinkled face was stern but kind. "Welcome," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Make yourselves at home, but remember, keep the fire in the fireplace burning. Never let it go out completely." Lisa frowned. "Why's that?" Martha's eyes darkened. "Just an old tradition. Keeps the cold and other things away." The group laughed nervously and carried their bags inside. The cabin was rustic yet charming, with wooden beams, cozy furniture, and a large, ornate fireplace as the centerpiece of the living room. The carvings on the mantel depicted strange, swirling patterns that none of them could decipher. "This thing is ancient," Kevin said, running his fingers over the carvings. "Kind of creepy though." Mark threw a log onto the fire, which roared to life. "It's just a fireplace, man. Nothing creepy about it." Dana smirked. "Unless it's haunted." Ooh. The group laughed, but Lisa couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. That night, they sat around the fire, sharing drinks and stories. The fire crackled and hissed, casting flickering shadows on the walls. "Do you hear that?" Lisa asked suddenly. "Hear what?" Ian said, leaning forward. "Whispers, like voices." Everyone fell silent, listening intently. For a moment, the only sound was the crackling fire. Then, faintly, they all heard it, a soft, melodic whisper, like someone speaking just out of earshot. "That's just the wind," Dana said dismissively. "Or maybe the wood settling. Don't freak yourself out." But Lisa wasn't convinced. The next morning, Mark woke up to find the fire had nearly burned out. He quickly threw another log on, but as he did, he noticed something strange. The ashes seemed to form symbols. "Guys, come look at this," he called. The group gathered around. The ashes had indeed arranged themselves into strange shapes, spirals, and jagged lines that looked almost intentional. "Probably just a coincidence," Ian said, though his voice wavered. That evening, they decided to explore the cabin. In the attic, Lisa found an old journal hidden behind a loose floorboard. It belonged to a man named Henry who had stayed in the cabin years ago. The journal detailed Henry's descent into madness. He wrote about the fireplace and how it seemed to watch him, whispering secrets in the night. He described shadowy figures that appeared in the flames and vivid nightmares that felt too real. The final entry read, "They come through the fire. I can't escape. If you're reading this, don't let the fire die, or they'll take you too." Lisa shared the journal with the group, but Dana dismissed it as the ramblings of a crazy man. "People love scaring themselves," she said. "It's just a story." But that night, the whispers grew louder. As the fire burned low, shadowy figures began to flicker within the flames. Lisa saw them first, tall, distorted shapes that seemed to reach toward her. "Do you see that?" she whispered. Mark nodded, his face pale. "What the hell is that?" The others turned to look, and the figures vanished. The group began to argue. Dana insisted it was a trick of the light, while Lisa and Mark were convinced something was wrong. Kevin tried to keep the peace, but tension was growing. Over the next few days, the phenomena grew worse. The whispers became voices, calling out their names. The shadowy figures began to appear outside the fireplace, lingering in the corners of the room. Objects moved on their own, and each of them had vivid nightmares of being consumed by flames. One night, Dana woke up screaming. She claimed something had grabbed her ankle and tried to pull her into the fireplace. The group found scorch marks on her skin. "It's real," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's real." Lisa continued to read the journal and discovered the history of the fireplace. It was built by a cult that worshipped a fire deity, using it as a portal to summon their god. The carvings were symbols of summoning, and the fire itself was a gateway. The cult had been destroyed, but the fireplace remained, cursed to trap anyone who stayed in the cabin. The only way to prevent the entities from crossing over was to keep the fire burning. The group decided to leave, but a blizzard had trapped them. The roads were impassable, and their phones had no signal. They were forced to stay and keep the fire going, taking turns tending it. But the shadows grew bolder. They began to attack, dragging Kevin into the flames. The others tried to save him, but he vanished, leaving only a charred mark on the floor. With Kevin gone, the group was in chaos. They tried to destroy the fireplace, but every attempt failed. The fire burned brighter, the voices louder, until the entire room felt alive with malevolence. One by one, the shadows claimed them. Dana was pulled into the flames, screaming. Ian disappeared in the attic, leaving behind only his shoes. Lisa and Mark were the last ones left. They decided to make a final stand, throwing gasoline onto the fire in hopes of destroying it. The cult had been destroyed, but the fireplace remained, cursed to trap anyone who stayed in the cabin. The only way to prevent the entities from crossing over was to keep the fire burning. The group decided to leave, but a blizzard had trapped them. The roads were impassable, and their phones had no signal. They were forced to stay and keep the fire going, taking turns tending it. But the shadows grew bolder. They began to attack, dragging Kevin into the flames. The others tried to save him, but he vanished, leaving only a charred mark on the floor. With Kevin gone, the group was in chaos. They tried to destroy the fireplace, but every attempt failed. The fire burned brighter, the voices louder, until the entire room felt alive with malevolence. One by one, the shadows claimed them. Dana was pulled into the flames, screaming. Ian disappeared in the attic, leaving behind only his shoes. Lisa and Mark were the last ones left. They decided to make a final stand, throwing gasoline onto the fire in hopes of destroying it. The explosion rocked the cabin, and for a moment, the fire went out. But as darkness fell, the whispers returned, louder than ever. When rescuers arrived days later, they found the cabin burned to the ground. Among the ashes was the fireplace untouched. The carvings glowed faintly, and faint whispers could still be heard in the wind. The fire never truly dies.